do you think that, Ambassador Sikri, that this is a very important statement made by him? Because I remember while he was campaigning for the elections, he said that we need to take the Tamils along. I mean, we can't possibly isolate them. So to say that, and land, as you know it so well, that has been a major bone of contention with the Tamils and one of the pillars of their agitation, which lasted for over 2 decades, Ambassador.
Yes, indeed. I think the statement by President Anura Dissanayake has been very important because they are very significant confidence building measures. And we do know that the JVP, which was originally Mr. Anura Dissanayaka's party, had been campaigning always on a very anti-India platform, and it was very staunchly against the Tamils. But now in the new alliance, the National People's Power Alliance, under which Mr. Anura Dissanayake has won this election and is now president of Sri Lanka, he has considerably modified his stance. He's taken a much broader picture, a picture of unity, a picture of carrying the all members of the island communities forward in harmony. And I think his first speech after his election as president on this subject in the Jaffna area has been very significant, because he recognizes that during the presidential elections he got very few votes from this region. In fact, a very paltry number of 27,000. And even the few election campaigns that he held in this region were poorly attended and had to be held indoors in small stadiums and so on. And they were very poorly attended. But this one has been held outdoors. It is massively attended. And I think it shows a mutual interest in getting over the problems of the past and in moving ahead. So I think this crucial aspect of land, as you've quite rightly said, this is a very significant demand of the Tamil community, and it is very central to the getting back, the rehabilitation, the reconciliation.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a very, very crucial aspect, and he has promised this is very good.
Right.
The second aspect he's promised about governance, which is, saying that he will hold the provincial and local council elections, is very important. Without that, there can be no interest, direct interest of Tamil.
You're right. Yeah.
In areas.
Right. Ambassador Sikri, it's not as if Vikramasinghe also promised. He actually returned. I remember, let me get the numbers right. He handed 197 deeds to people in Jaffna and, return of over 100 acres, and also said that I'm going to give you 15,000 freehold land deeds, for the residents of the northern province. The thing is that if you talk to Tamils today in Sri Lanka, they're still talking about, of course, there is starvation. There are missing people from their families. Children's futures are over. It's traumatic. They have no agency. They have no social agency. They have nothing. And they still say, our land. This is something which was stilled, which was something, we were the ones who came here and we built all this, but it's been taken over with, complete brazenness by the archaeology department. I mean, you get into our temples and you say, okay, we are taking over this. You get into our lands and everything. So what do you think is the difference, Ambassador Sikri, between what Vikramasinghe said and what Dissanayake is saying? How is it going to be different?
Well, I think we can say that former President Vikramasinghe, he didn't implement what he surely as a sure of the gesture, a political gesture, empty, meaningless political gesture. He had given those titles back, but I don't think any of them were implemented. I don't know how many of them actually got it back and they actually can go back and start living and, rebuilding their lives on that land. So I think this is one thing. And obviously, we've seen that there was no implementation, and that's why President Vikramasinghe did not get the votes. The people of this area were supporting the candidacy of Sajid Premadasa in this, but he too did not get the votes. And now that not only Mr. Anura Dissanayake has been elected, and he has come back to this region to campaign for the parliamentary elections that are going to be held in a few days, shows his interest in reconciliation. So let us say it is a ray of hope. And I think the Tamil people have responded positively to that, because I think, as we know, Mr. Anura Dissanayake has had good talks with the Indian government. There have been good prospects for the future. He has visited India earlier much earlier this year.
Yes.
So I think all those show a kind of sincerity on the behalf of Mr. Anura Dissanayake, which I think
Yeah,
the people are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and carry it forward and hope that it will
yeah.
be implemented this time and they'll be able to get their lands back and so their livelihoods back and economic prosperity back
Yeah,
also.
he's Ambassador Sikri. He said something else. He said, "I'm not going to allow Indian fishermen with their trawlers to kind of come into our space and do what they've been doing. I mean, it's illegal. Of course, we know the greater issue is that about how the trawlers clash. That's another conversation. You know, Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, Muka Stalin, has been bringing in this up. 28 fishermen recently were also shoved into jails in Sri Lanka. But I like what he said later. He said, because the Tamils, even now in Sri Lanka, they depend on fishing as one of their major, occupations. He said, I'm not going to allow them to come inside here and kind of take away your livelihood. Do you think it's a very, very smart diplomatic move? Because Sri Lankan Tamils, although I'm a Tamil, so we are united because of our mother tongue, but there is a great difference. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree. The fishing issue is definitely the single most sensitive issue, which directly involves the Tamil people of Sri Lanka, and it's their livelihood also versus the livelihood of the people of Tamil Nadu in India. And I think a lot of this dates back to the agreement on the Kachativo Island, and that has caused a lot of disruption in the traditional patterns of fishing which were there and the traditional understanding of the fishing pattern. But there is no option right now except to work out a friendly agreement with the government of Sri Lanka, which will help the people of both sides, help the fishermen of both sides of India and Tamil Nadu and the Tamil fishermen of Jaffna. And I think there has to be some kind of cooperation. This business of, arresting the fishermen, putting them in jail, maltreating them, causing a lot of dissatisfaction in Tamil Nadu, and quite understandably so. There has to be some agreement. There are a number of countries in the world where these fishermen disagreement on fishing rights, on poaching, etc. is there. But always I have found that if you can work out a joint agreement, you have a joint agreement, you work together to increase the overall availability of fish in the area, you employ a number of technical and scientific methods for this, and you work together with the understanding that we both can benefit by it. It can be a win-win solution. It's tough because
Right.
there's years of unhappiness and sensitivity on the Indian side about it. But I do think that this is a way out, and we can work on it as we can work on many other issues.
Right. Ambassador Sikri, a lot of Tamils say that the demographics of the areas where they have lived for, centuries has also changed. A lot of Sinhalas have come and, started living there, and the demographics, like I said, has changed. The language, the way they live, they are very, very polite to each other. But then, there are Tamils and then there are Sinhalese. Why do you think Dissanayake is making promises like this? Because the Tamils are very, very, yes, they really applauded when Dissanayake said this. But then they also have this question as to why is the new president talking like this? Do you think that he knows very well that without the Tamil support, I mean, notwithstanding his politics, Anura's politics, it will be very difficult for him to kind of, take the country along, particularly after such a trying economic times that they have faced?
Yes, economic prosperity is the key, and when there is a complete lack of economic prosperity, we saw what Sri Lanka went through. But I think that I think the new president of Sri Lanka is coming from a place where he recognizes that it's the Indian government which helped them out of this crisis. And he recognizes that very well, and that's a very important point. It's a very important starting point because it means that both sides can work together on building a relationship which benefits everybody and doesn't make anybody unhappy to the extent of hostility. Now, the promise that he's making to return the land is a very important one because, as I said, it means a revival of livelihoods. You get your land back, you can live there, you can have your livelihood there, prosperity there, and your the children can go to school and look for a better future. Now, the question of getting the lands back will obviously mean that the coming of Sinhalese there may then go down because the lands have then gone back to the Tamil community, and encroachment and so on will be much less. So it is important to have this promise fulfilled. Let us see what the elections bring up on the 14th of November in Sri Lanka, and if indeed the National People's Power Alliance gets a good vote in Parliament, then he will be in a position to actually go ahead and implement. But if it's again a hung Parliament, and there are other parties who also get more votes, and it's a divided Parliament House, then it might be more difficult. But I think with the way in which he has been campaigning, and he's decided to go back to Jaffna in this area, despite the fact that he didn't get much from them during the presidential election, and tell them that, look, I've come back to, and I'm promising you this. It'll be difficult for him not to fulfill his promises. Of course, he does say that, the final settlement about devolution will have to be done through a constitutional amendment. He's talked about a constitutional amendment. He's not willing to go on the earlier amendment of the 13th plus amendment. So I think this is a problem that the Tamils will have to look at and discuss with his party. But let us see what the parliamentary